Why is it in Jewish law and in Jewish history and consciousness, whenever a person is killed, heaven forbid, for being a Jew, we say that they died or were killed al kiddush Hashem, sanctifying God's name? Why is it that the death of a Jew is straightway associated with the sanctification of God's name? You see, killing Jews for being Jews and attacking the Jewish people is indeed defiling and attacking the very name of God. And where do we see this? It is in this week's parasha, in a book in and of itself. Incredibly, the only place in the whole Torah, in this week's parasha Behaalotecha, we see these inversed nuns, almost these reversed brackets. We have a pasuk, two psukim, two verses that we're all very familiar with. We say it every single time we take out the Torah, and every time we put back the Torah. We say, Vayehi, binsoa, and it was when the ark traveled with the Jewish people. And according to our sages, when the Jewish people went to war, and when they traveled, the ark of God went with them. And what do we say? Vayehi, binsoa, we say, Kuma Hashem vayafutzu ovecha, arise God, and let your enemies be dispersed. And when we put back the Torah, we say, Shuva Hashem, return God, Revavot Yisrael, to your soldiers and people of Israel. Why is it that we are calling the enemies of the Jewish people the enemies of God? Why are we telling God, rise up against your enemies? They're not the enemies of God, they're the enemies of the Jewish people. You see, and it is so clear today, those who rise up to fight against the Jewish people are fighting against our interpretation of godliness, our interpretation of morality and moral monotheism, spiritual monotheism, which came to teach the world the ideas of a profoundly personal, moral and purposeful God. And you see, on October 7th in Simchat Torah, on our holy holiday, as it was 50 years before Yom Kippur, people came in the name of a perverse God to kill, to destroy, to burn babies, to murder men, women and children, to take hostages. That's what happened, as we know. Fighting in a perverse way against the very nature of godliness and goodness, you see, since time immemorial, standing up against Abraham and his children, the children of those who go in his path, is opposing everything which is God and good. It was Avraham Avinu who taught the world, we see, where God says, Hamachasani Avraham, can I not reveal to Avraham, the one who's going to teach his children, Alechet b'derech Hashem, in the way of God. And what is the way of God? La'asot tzedakah mishpat, to live according to charitable righteousness. To be a Jew is to be part of a merciful tradition of justice and righteousness. And God is good. Godliness is fighting for the celebration of life and the triumph of life over death. But you see, since time immemorial, there are those such as Nimrod then who tried to burn Abraham at the stake for his vision of righteousness and morality, until today, burning Rahman Litzman and killing Jews. Our son, unfortunately, Daniel, one of those 1,250, killed on that day to defend what godliness is all about. You see, the 20th century is littered with those who came to oppose God, whether it was Nazi fascism or whether it was the communism of the Soviet Union, which came and opposed in a godless world of those who would be burnt at the stake, so to speak, and opposed for their belief in godliness. And whether it's those in the name of atheism, communism or fascism, or those in the name from the Crusades and Inquisitions of then until the religious wars of today, of fanatical Islam today, the war is the same, to fight against those who propose that God is goodness, God is a triumph of life over death. That is exactly what Yisrael's mission is. Yisrael, those who struggle with God, Yashar El, as our sages say, straight with God, where godliness is life. How many times it says throughout Jewish tradition, the first thing we say in the morning when we wake up, Modani Lefanecha, we say, Melech Kal Chai V'Kayam, God is a living God. And all the time we refer to God as a living God, Divrei Elokim Chaim, the God of life, the God who believes in life, the triumph of life over death, the triumph of morality, of conscience over those who wish for death and destruction. And therefore, it is very simple and very painful. The enemies of the Jewish people are indeed the enemies of God Himself, the enemies of those who stand for godliness and goodness, for morality, that there is a divine purpose where life triumphs over death, and morality over those who say might is right as opposed to conscience and right to right. May we merit Bezrat Hashem that the enemies of the Jewish people, the enemies of God, and our interpretation of life and love, which triumph over death and darkness, may it prevail. May Hashem rise, bring back every single one of our hostages, protect every single one of our soldiers, because defense of the Jewish people against the horrific murders of Hamas and their enemies is defending God, the name of God, kiddush Hashem, to sanctify the name of God, of love, of light, and of life. Shabbat Shalom.